Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Assembly Judiciary, Tuesday, June 16th, 2015. We do not yet have a quorum, so we will start as a subcommittee. We have one author so far, Mr. Wachowski. This will be item 2, SB 28.
Good morning, Assembly members, Mr. Chair. SB 28 adds clarity to the existing law that requires that a judge consider any prior no contest plea to domestic violence as a factor along with the current factors used to determine an order for spousal support. The bill was amended in Senate Judiciary to make it a requirement. It's just a consideration, as the staff report points out. It retains judicial discretion in awarding spousal supports while ensuring that someone who pleaded no contest to domestic violence charge does not escape appropriate scrutiny by the courts. And I would urge an aye vote.
Thank you. Are there witnesses and supports?
I don't believe there are today.
Sure doesn't look like it.
This is
any witnesses?
The typical Wachowski bill doesn't have any witnesses, but it's a good bill. It's a small step.
Off to a good start.
Yeah.
Any opposition? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee. Questions, comments? No? Senator, you may close.
I'll be back with other bills that the committee will have an opportunity.
We will have a little longer conversation.
Right, but at least today this is an itty-bitty little bill, and I urge an aye vote once you have a full committee.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
All right. Senator Lara. This takes us to item 1, SB 14. All right. And before you start, could we establish a quorum?
Stone.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Alejo. Chow. Here. Chu. Here. Gallagher. Here. Garcia. Holden. Mainshine. O'Donnell.
Here. Good. We do have a quorum. I'll take a motion on SB 28. The motions do pass. I have a motion and a second. Would you call the roll, please?
Stone.
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wagner. Wagner, aye. Alejo. Chow. Chow, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Gallagher. Gallagher, aye. Garcia. Holden. Mainshine. O'Donnell. O'Donnell, aye.
That bill is out. All right, Senator Lara, SB 14. All right,
Thank you.
number 1.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Members,
Morning.
SB 14 would increase protections for child victims of sexual abuse in civil courts by preventing an adult in a position of authority, like a teacher who sexually abuses a child, from claiming the child consented as a defense. Additionally, the bill will ensure a victim of child abuse sexual history cannot be used as evidence against them. Currently, in California, different rules apply to sexual abuse cases depending on whether the case is in civil or criminal court. Rather, recently, a teacher in my district was convicted in criminal court of lewd acts against a 14-year-old student and was sentenced to serve time in prison. Following that conviction, the family's victim filed suit against LAUSD alleging the district had been negligent and the victim had suffered serious emotional damages as a result. LAUSD argued that the 14-year-old student had consented to have sex with her teacher and were permitted to use her sexual history as evidence in their defense. This is not an isolated incident. Other school districts and employers have made similar arguments in civil cases. These differences between civil and penal code are dangerous and threaten to allow sexual predators and indifferent entities off the hook for child abuse and negligence. SB 14 will close this loophole and ensure victims' rights are protected. Respectfully, for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. Your witnesses and supports.
Good morning. Christina Romero, Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California, representing over 115 health centers in the state. After extensive work on SB 14, we believe this bill will provide greater protections to child victims of sexual abuse in civil courts. Currently in California, a perpetrator can argue in civil cases that the child consented to a sexual relationship with an adult. In support of his or her defense, the perpetrator can introduce evidence of the child's sexual history. This contrasts with criminal cases where California's rape shield law protects victims from their sexual history from being used against them. SB 14 will prevent an adult in a position of authority who sexually abuses a child from claiming that the child consented. In addition, it limits the use of a child's sexual history in defense of a civil claim for damages. We believe at Planned Parenthood, the SB 14 provides protection to children and remedies current flawed law by ensuring that minors are victims who are victims of sexual abuse are not then again victimized through the judicial process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Dawn Kepke with McHugh Kepke and Associates on behalf of Crime Victims United of California and Child Abuse Prevention Center, both in very strong support. Both of my clients feel that this really is addressing a loophole of sorts in that the criminal law, penal code, provides that a minor may not consent in these types of cases, whereas the civil code allows for that consent to occur. That's really concerning in that a lot of these types of cases happen where a minor is in a relationship, in some kind of engagement with an individual who's in a position of authority, and that position of authority is used to help perpetuate that sexual abuse. So we really think that this is a very important bill to help close what we perceive to be a loophole, not allowing a minor to be considered as consenting in those cases where that individual would be in a position of authority. So for those reasons, we're very strongly in support. We urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none, any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, bring it back to the committee. Questions, comments? Mr. Mainshine?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank the author for bringing this important measure. I'm pleased to be a co-author on this and want to thank you and certainly urge an aye vote from the committee.
Thank you. And we did have a motion from Mr. Chu and a second from Ms. Garcia. Questions, comments? All right. And another witness?
No, I was just here to answer questions if need be. I'm from Planned Parenthood.
Okay. Thank you. So, Senator Laurie, you may close.
Respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you, members.
Thank you. If you call the roll, please.
Stone.
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wagner. Wagner, aye. Alejo. Chow. Chow, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Gallagher. Gallagher, aye. Garcia. Garcia, aye. Holden. Mainshine. Mainshine, aye. O'Donnell. O'Donnell, aye.
And that motion was due pass.
Thank you.
Bill is out. Thank you, Senator. So we have 6 items on the consent agenda. Unless someone would like to pull one, I'll take a motion on the consent agenda. Motion and a second on the consent agenda. Call the roll, please.
Stone.
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wagner. Wagner, aye. Alejo. Chow. Chow, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Gallagher. Gallagher, aye. Garcia. Garcia, aye. Holden. Mainshine. Mainshine, aye. O'Donnell. O'Donnell, aye.
Those bills are out. That is SB 161, SB 244, SB 340, SB 470, SB 672, and SB 785. We are waiting for 2 more authors, Mr. Mullen and Mr. Eduardo Garcia. If we could get them here. Mr. Mullen, welcome. This brings us to item 3, ACR 67.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
And members. Presenting ACR 67, which simply states for the record that the California State Legislature in its entirety formally renounces and opposes a proposed ballot initiative which would urge harm to be inflicted on individuals based solely on their inherent, unchangeable characteristics as human beings. This so-called Sodomite Suppression Act is a ballot initiative that calls for the people of California to commit acts of violence, harm, and intimidation to persons who engage in specified sexual conduct with persons of the same gender. The proposed initiative refers to homosexuality as a, quote, monstrous evil and an abominable crime against nature. It would ban communicating messages of tolerance to minors, bar gays and lesbians, or anyone who voices acceptance from holding government jobs or public office, and authorize mass murder of lesbians and gays. ACR 67 provides that the legislature stands in moral and legal objection to the ballot measure just described, as well as to any other ballot measure that seeks to inflict harm on innocent persons. ACR 67 would also provide that the legislature calls upon the residents of the state of California to reject hate speech. As noted in ACR 64, I fully support and affirm the right of free speech, no matter how abhorrent. However, as a legislature, I hope that we can unanimously agree that the ballot proposal is repugnant and unconscionable, and I want to state that I generally would not be supportive of the legislature taking positions on citizen ballot initiatives. However, I think we can all agree that this one is so egregious and outrageous that it calls for the unusual action of formal condemnation, and it is my hope that ACR 7 receives unanimous bipartisan support. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Your witnesses and supports.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Joe Michael for Equality California. Just wanted to quickly state our strong support for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Mr. Chu?
Thank you. While I wish we didn't have to discuss this matter, I want to thank the author for bringing this forward, and it was important for me to stand also as a joint author of this measure. It is hard to imagine a ballot measure that more clearly reflects bigotry and hate that is as abhorrent and repugnant as this measure is. And with that, I do hope that every member of the state legislature will be able to support condemnation of this ballot measure.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Gallagher.
So I completely stand united with you and on your resolution here to call out this measure as repugnant. It shouldn't even be on. It shouldn't even be on the ballot. And I think I'm right there with you on that. But one of my concerns is that some of the language in here seems to kind of lump into this, those who might sincerely believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, and people who, might want to exercise their religious beliefs in their business, and kind of lumping those folks into, what this gentleman who's proposed this measure into that kind of group, and I don't think that's. I don't think that's the right way to go. I think let's just call out this measure for what it is, which is repugnant, and not try to lump in all. It just seems like the last couple whereas clauses seem to kind of link in those who believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, and also businesses that may want to practice their religious belief. That's been a controversial issue here lately, and I think we should just stick to the subject, which is this measure.
Assemblyman, I appreciate the comment. Certainly, the thrust of this entire ACR is this proposed initiative. We are not, I believe, straying into what would be considered legitimate concerns based on religious beliefs. So I would just, counter by saying that's certainly not our intention. Our intention is to focus on the hate speech concerns here, the outward bigotry, and call for violence, really, in the proposed initiative.
Any other comments? Ms. Wagner.
Well, I'm going to echo Mr. Gallagher's concerns. A simple statement that that's a repugnant ballot initiative, and all citizens, if ever given the opportunity to sign the petition, ought not sign it, and if ever given the opportunity to vote for it, ought not vote for it. Accomplishes what needs to be accomplished. But, come on. It does. You go back to the Briggs Initiative in 78. Come on. You dig up reparative therapy, which we had bills about last year. It's great, the thrust of this, but the baggage that gets thrown in fairly typically to make point on one side of the aisle. You wouldn't have to come here and say, I really hope we get bipartisan support if you didn't have all that baggage in there. There's not a soul on this dais, there's not a soul in this legislature that supports random execution of people because they're gay.
Right.
Just say that, but this doesn't say it. We're all going to vote for it, but I just need to reiterate what Mr. Gallagher says, and it's something that I've seen in my entire time up in this legislature. Simple statement of what is right and what is wrong gets festooned with all kinds of baubles that make one side of the aisle feel good and make you, with what is good public policy, have to come and say, hey, let's try to get bipartisan support for this. And I just think that's bad form. I'm going to vote for this, but Mr. Gallagher is right. There is stuff in here that many members, constituents of ours, would have some difficulty signing on to, and that's not the part about killing gays. We all agree. Frankly, I said on a floor speech when we were dealing with the initiative that we're giving this guy much more than the 15 minutes of fame or ignominy that he deserves. For what it's worth, and probably not very much. Those are my thoughts on this one.
Thank you. Other comments? Questions of the author?
Through
do you
the
have a
chair.
motion? Is there a second? Motion and a second, Mr. Gallagher?
I guess for me, Mr. Molina, the last two whereases clause of this resolution are the ones that I think are just kind of, take us into an area that's outside of what we're trying to condemn here. And I would ask that you consider removing those because I think that, everything meets with what we're trying to say here in terms of condemning this proposed proposition. So I would just ask your consideration on those whereas clauses. I think
I appreciate the comment, Assemblyman. I will certainly take the discussion here back to our office. My hope is that we can speak with one voice on the floor of the Assembly in condemnation of this. So I appreciate the comments here today. And just to the Assemblyman's point about asking for bipartisan support, frankly, that's my standard close in asking for bipartisan support in something of this nature. I certainly hope we can all speak with one voice. With that, I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. And I'll take that as your close. Call the roll, please. And the motion is that this resolution be adopted.
Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wagner? Wagner, aye. Alejo? Chow? Chow, aye. Chu? Chu, aye. Gallagher? Gallagher, aye. Garcia? Garcia, aye. Holden? Holden, aye. Mainshine? Mainshine, aye. O'Donnell? O'Donnell, aye.
That resolution is out. Thank you. So we're waiting on Mr. Garcia. Mr. Lowe, are you presenting for Mr. Garcia? So that brings us to item number 4, AJR 16. Mr. Lowe presenting for Mr. Garcia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. I'm here today to present AJR 16 related to blood donations on behalf of fellow joint authors, Mr. Garcia and Mr. Bloom, myself. As many of you may know, currently there's a ban on gay men from donating blood. Obviously, we live in 2015 and adhere to science. And as many of us know, the American Red Cross and the Blood Centers of America have asked for science to be applied to this particular group of individuals. I personally have a story related to this issue in which I was asked when I was mayor for the city of Campbell to host a blood drive on City Hall property to which I could not donate blood, even though we test the blood and I'm perfectly healthy and fine in terms of the ability for this effort in terms of saving lives. And so this joint resolution asks and calls upon the FDA to reevaluate this 1-year deferral and to equally apply science to this issue. I respectfully ask for a vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in support, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Joe Michael for Equality California. We are proud to sponsor this resolution, and it responds in particular to the new guidelines that the FDA has proposed for blood donation. Even under these new guidelines, which would be that 1-year deferral period, bisexual men and gay men would still be treated differently based on their sexual orientation alone. Guidelines that continue to focus on sexual orientation perpetuate stigma and are not in line with modern science. Instead, AJR 16 encourages adoption of science-based guidelines that focus on individual risk factors associated with behavior rather than simply sexual orientation. We'd like to thank the authors for coming together to bring this resolution forward, and we ask for your support of the resolution today, and happy to answer any questions if they might come up.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none, any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, bring it back to the committee. Mr. Chu.
As a co-author of this measure, I certainly share the perspective that we need to have policies based on science and not based on discriminatory perspectives. And with that, I ask that we move this bill.
Do you have a motion and a second? Any further comment? Mr. Gallagher.
What is the reason that FDA has this deferral in place? I mean, is there, my understanding from some of the analysis is that there's a higher percentage of carrying HIV so is that, and is there science showing that that's not the case? I mean, so what is the kind of purpose behind the FDA's deferral right now?
Sure. Well, the policy was first implemented in terms of the lifetime ban in 1983, so longer than almost I've been alive. And when we talk about the 30 years is something to reevaluate and use science. A lot has progressed since then.
No ages in there.
But what I think is important to sort of focus on is a uniform approach, whereas one could be heterosexual, engaged in promiscuous activity, and be prohibited for a limited period of time, whereas if you're simply based upon your sexual orientation, not focused on risk or behavior, but just sexual orientation, there's a 1-year deferral. And so I think that distinction is important, which again is to say that such as we should base this upon science and risk and behavior versus just simply sexual orientation. So one could be in a monogamous relationship or not even sexual, and just by sexual orientation be prohibited from this being able to donate blood. And I think that's the distinction in terms of the policy that we're focused on.
So just to follow up on that, is there actually a question asked of like, hey, what is your sexual activity? How many, partners have you had when you donate blood? I can't even recall that you fill that out when you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's actually quite. There's a number of questions, including have you traveled to a number of different countries, and including have you engaged in activity with a person of the same sex? Now, arguably, in terms of a more joking sense, to have a member of the gay community admit that they've not had sex with someone within the past year, I don't think that someone would do that. But equally, someone could lie about their activities and still donate blood. So again, I think the process is faulty in the sense that one could give false information or inaccurate information, and the blood is still tested nonetheless too. And so again, I think when focusing on the policy and the merits of the issue at hand, again, it's science and risk behaviors.
Another question, Ms. Garcia.
And just to make a comment on this point, as a female, you're asked if you've had sex or intercourse with a man who's had sex or intercourse with another man. And so questions about our sexual activity are asked of us as women also, irrespective of our orientation. And so this bill, I think, is not just about eliminating discrimination, but also saving lives. I mean, the science shows that, that 1-year deferral is something that we do for so many other things so that we are safe. And our blood banks are so low on donations, so we have folks who can and should be able to give blood here. So I think it's also about allowing individuals to be part of the life-saving process.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions or comments, Mr. Lowe, you may close.
Again, when thinking about this policy and this particular issue, when you look at other nations, and we talk about the importance of the welfare of the safety, certainly this provides an opportunity for us to advance in this cause, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. And the motion is that this Assembly Joint Resolution be adopted. Call the roll, please.
Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wagner?
No.
Wagner, no. Alejo? Alejo, aye. Chow? Chow, aye. Chu? Chu, aye. Gallagher? Garcia? Garcia, aye. Holden? Holden, aye. Mainshine? Mainshine, aye. O'Donnell? O'Donnell, aye.
The bill's out. Thank you. That resolution is out. That brings us to the end of our agenda. All bills having been moved. If you would like to add on, this is your opportunity.
You want to be on consent? Consent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice job.
Thank you. Less than 30 minutes.